Yes, it is now recording.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody from Costa Rica, and welcome to this panel on the importance of multi-annual community tsunami exercise. The goal of this panel is to introduce you to the importance of having tsunami exercise in a systematic form, and to present you with the manual that it was developed by the Caribbean Tsunami Warning System to plan for this multi-annual. So today, well, to begin with, the Caribbean has a tradition of tsunami exercises. We perform Caribe Wave every year in March and having hundreds of thousands of participants. And we in the Caribbean had gained the pace of doing this so every year, and have acknowledged the importance of this as a process to improve every year the community preparedness. So to present this subject today, we are having Krista von Hillebrand Andrade, who is the Deputy Director of the International Tsunami Information Center Caribbean Office. And we have Marie-Noëlle Rabu, I'm not sure if I pronounce it well, who is the Chief of Service of the Direction of Prevention of Major Risks in Martinique. So we're going to start with Krista. Welcome both, and thank you very much for being part of this panel.
Yeah, very good afternoon to people that are joining us from the Caribbean, but also from, I think, North America. We have from the Pacific also. We have Dr. Laura Kong, the Director of the International Tsunami Center, with us today. And I think we have, yes, so these are our guests today. And it's thank you very much. And it's good to be sharing this event with you, Dr. Sylvia Chacon, and with you, Marie. So as Sylvia mentioned, this document that we'll be presenting today is part of an effort to support improved preparedness and exercising here in the Caribbean. And in the first presentation, I will be going over with talking about Caribe Wave exercise, and then also a little bit about Tsunami Ready, of which exercises are a significant component. And then Marie will be talking specifically about the manual itself. So I think most people here, yes, on this webinar are quite familiar with the threat of tsunamis in the Caribbean. Yes, they are not as frequent as they are in the Pacific, but the threat is real. Over 80 events, some of them very significant, causing the loss of lives of almost 4,500 people throughout our past 500 years. Some of these tsunamis most of the tsunamis are local tsunamis, or the impacts are occurring very close to where these tsunamis are being generated. So in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Jamaica, Venezuela, and Panama. And those are the ones that are on this map with the orange bar. But you will also notice that we are also threatened by tsunamis that are distant sources, that so travel more than 3 hours until they are recorded here in the Caribbean. And for example, that would be like the 1755 event from Portugal, which was very well recorded. So we have local events, we have distant events. And then while most of the tsunamis are, you can see most of the sources are delimited by the shape of the symbol, and most of the sources you can see are delimited by circles, which mean that they were caused by earthquakes. But as you start to look closer, we also have triangles, which represent tsunamis that have been recorded produced by earthquake, by volcanic eruptions. And then we also have by landslides. We have at least one event that was due to in the Southern Caribbean. So this is an event, this is a threat that we have in the Caribbean. And one of the situations is, since it is not as frequent, for example, as in the Pacific, many people may tend to forget that this hazard even exists. So for many years, it was called the forgotten hazard. So one of the important aspects, or why we really do a lot of emphasis on exercises, is because every year it gives the opportunity for the communities and for the countries to review their standard operating procedures and check to see how their system is working. So obviously we need to be ready, and there's two ways to be ready, principally, or we have two, I think, systematic mechanisms by which we try to get to that last mile within our system. One is the Tsunami Ready program, and then Kariba Wave 2020, Kariba Wave, and that was the last one, Kariba Wave 22. But so we have, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that brings us, and how the Manual and Guide 86 supports this effort. So I think over the last couple of days or months, more and more people are hearing, more and more people are talking about it within our community, of this audacious transformative goal that the global tsunami program under the UNESCO IOC framework has set for the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which started in 2021 and runs through 2030. And it is that 100% at-risk communities be tsunami ready, or meet the indicators of the Tsunami Ready program. And and within these indicators, there's 12 indicators that are divided up in 3 different areas: and assessment, preparedness, and response. I just want to highlight that under the preparedness section, there is an indicator that says the community should conduct a tsunami exercise at least every 2 years. Initially, we wanted to put every year, but we said, things come up, things happen, so give them a little flexibility, ideally every year, but to meet the requirement, or meet the Tsunami Ready guideline, it would be at least every 2 years. So we see that exercising is at the core of tsunami preparedness at our region, and therefore we need to, instead of asking every country to prepare and put together their own exercise and organize themselves, felt it was easier and could have a greater impact if all together as a region, then we practice our tsunami preparedness through an exercise. The first exercise was held in 2011, and we thought we were going to follow maybe the PTWS and other systems that do it every 2 years. So we took a break in 2012, had another exercise in 2013, and people said, our member states said, look, we really should get this done every year, because if it's in our calendar, it's every year, and people are always free to decide at what level they want to participate and if they exactly want to participate. But let's make it available every year, because that way it can become something standard on, for example, emergency management planning activities. So as of 2013, it's held every year. Originally, we just had one scenario, but then the member state said, it would be nice to have a selection of scenarios. So they have suggested maybe even 3, with the idea that each of the scenarios would provide some type of impact to the countries in the Caribbean to make it as relevant as possible. Historically, we really just had 2. So we have a Kariba Wave task team for the oversight, so for the high-level planning of this exercise, and that for many years has been led by Dr. Elizabeth Vanacore of the Puerto Rico Seismic Network. Then ITIC-CAR prepares a handbook and sort of coordinates the exercise with the support of the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center and many other stakeholders that step up to the plate for different things, from the French islands for providing French translation for the webinars, reviewing the documents, the USGS for providing the earthquake impacts. We have PTWC that develops and then issues the simulated threat products, which are then sent officially to designated tsunami warning focal points and national tsunami warning centers. Also, you have participated in the exercise since 2016. We do have an online registration system, which is supported by the University of Southern California, their Earthquake Center. And then each member state and territory is asked to complete an online survey. So it's a comprehensive exercise which contains the main elements. And we've established a certain set of goals and metrics for these exercises, whereby we test communications with the tsunami warning focal point receiving the messages, receiving a dummy message from PTWC, the participation of member states, so how they engage with other stakeholders, so beyond the tsunami warning focal point, that community involvement, that we track the number of participants, and we can see over the years we've had in the first two categories, almost we have all member states participating. We have almost all member states receiving messages. The participation at the community level has varied. This year, it had gone up at one point to 82%. Last year was 56%. We still don't have the result for this year. So the number of participants, we had our maximum almost 800,000 in 2019. So we have a big engagement. And this year there was almost 410,000 people. So exceeding a little bit that expectation. Then we have countries submitting their exercises, their evaluations, and we, basically the countries say, they are satisfied with the exercise. So last year, 96% of people said that our member states said they were satisfied. So let's quickly move on. So then, as I said, every year we select scenarios are selected, and that's done with the scientific community to have scenarios. They might be a little bit exaggerated, but they are based on plausible faults and situations. And most of them have been on local earthquakes, but we have had volcanoes. For example, we did do Kikimjeni in 2019. We've had distant earthquakes. So for example, we had one off the shelf off of Florida in 2015. We also did one in 2020 and 2014 for Portugal. So we do have a large amount of resources. And for this, handbooks are prepared and they're all available to be used, maybe even for other exercises or for the countries how they esteem. The participation has been very varied. Before the pandemic, we had, people felt very comfortable doing big drills and big exercises and evacuating schools. And, we had some impressive images of, lots and lots of people, actually, evacuating the areas. Since the pandemic hit, we've also emphasized that, in addition to that, practicing your evacuation routes, there's other things, that also can be done. So we've had a lot more emphasis on there's been more emphasis on seminars and tabletop exercises, virtual meetings, but the in-person and evacuation exercises have been picking up. So we know that we have a lot of participants in the exercise. So as I said, this year we think over almost 410,000 people. And what more than the people, I'd like to note that we haven't sort of gone through exactly I'm sorry, what happened there? Did I miss it? Okay, this one I wanted to show here. So so within our website, Tsunami Zone, people are able, when they register, to select the category or what stakeholder community they belong to. So if they're an individual family, or if they're childcare, or K through 12, or we have colleges and universities, local government, state government, federal government, indigenous people, businesses, hotels, healthcare, senior facilities, disabilities, nonprofit, neighborhood groups, preparedness organizations, faith-based organizations, museums, volunteer service clubs, youth organizations, animal shelter service providers, agriculture, livestock, volunteer radio groups, science, engineering, media organizations. And one thing I want to emphasize, and this is related to this manual, is that we don't have just, at the national level. The first year we did the exercise in 2011, I remember it was also mostly just the tsunami warning centers participating, and national authorities in emergency management, disaster risk reduction, and a few others, a couple schools and things. But now we see a full array of organizations participating. I think this year, I think more than ever, and many of these people, might not even be aware, how to exactly do and organize an exercise, right? Our local emergency managers and our state governments can't be organizing probably exercises for all these different communities. So that's another thing why justification for the tool and the manual that was prepared. So the only categories that we don't have people have ever had any people registering are tribes and indigenous peoples, which we know exist in the region. We just have to do a little bit more work identifying them with our national counterparts, and animal shelters, which is interesting because that is for many people, that is a very significant sector that needs to be addressed. So we have evaluations, so we know how the exercise is going, so that's good. Each country can look and see their level of communication activities and level of participation and level of preparedness. This year we prepared a video to help encourage participation beyond just that national stakeholder, but really try to empower communities to plan their own exercise and decide their way of participating from the family level all the way through organizations. And through tsunamizone.org, also, to recognize, it's important to recognize, because this is not easy to do an exercise, a tabletop, or if you do an evacuation exercise, or you do a seminar, it all takes a lot of work. So tsunamizone.org provides a way where all participants can then obtain their certification of participation. So we do this every year, and so we have a broad group of people, stakeholders participating. And so we thought that one thing that was clear and led to the thought of doing this manual was from Patrick Tiborn, who preceded me as the chair of Working Group 4 of Kariba EWS, Lieutenant Patrick Tiborn. He was with Anisa at the time, and he said, look, we're doing these exercises, every year, but it looks like every year people are starting from zero, and that shouldn't be it. We should be growing. You should be growing on top what you did. You should already be thinking, oh, this is what we're going to do this year and next year. So he put together the first the manual. He prepared it, and then after that it went through revisions and suggestions and was shared until its publication. We also noticed that we got the feedback from the countries that a lot of countries were not doing the full exercise cycle. So they do the exercise and they would have, like, for example, it's very important that you do your evaluation, but then you follow up in the evaluation, then the next year you ingest that, right? So it seemed like, he said, well, maybe people just aren't experienced, maybe that would, that was something that was noted. Also that as Tsunami Ready is ramped up, we're taking this to 100%, and noting that one of the indicators is that you have to do these biannual exercises, then let's help them plan these exercises and make them as effective as possible. So Tsunami Ready also was a motivation to do this manual. Then we had, there is a guideline that was prepared by UNESCO IOC. I think Dr. Laura Kong was heavily involved in the development that. It's a very complete document on how to prepare for and evaluate exercises. But it's quite high level, it's very text heavy. And if we're saying, okay, now we're going to be giving this to a church, and now we're giving this to a school, now it's going to be given to maybe a university emergency management manager or a hotel, and you want them to do this, then it seemed like we needed something that was a little bit more accessible and easier for them to follow. So building upon, so we use this as a reference, that was one of the goals. Specifically that this broader sector of participants could benefit from more graphics and examples. So as I said, so that led to the proposal by our colleague Patrick, who I see Colonel Patrick Tiborn online today, to start the design of this manual, which I think it took like 5 years. But what's in the manual, the details of this manual, that's for Marie to present now. So I'll stop here. I don't know if there's any specific, Sylvia, if you want to take the questions maybe after Marie's presentation, or if there be any questions if you want me to answer some now. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Thank
I will.
Thank you, Krista.
Thank you. So I have stopped
Thank
sharing.
You, Krista. Thank you, Krista, very much for your nice background related to this manual and the importance of the manual and the exercise tradition that we have in our region. As you mentioned, participants can ask questions through the chat, and I will handle the questions to both of you at the end of Marie's presentation. So, Marie, please.
Okay. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, Marie. It looks good.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. First of all, before beginning the presentation, I would like to thank the chair of the ICG Caribbean HWS, Sylvia Chacon-Barantes, for having proposed the satellite activity, and thanks Krista, via Krista Van Hillebrandt, the UN Safe Ocean Lab, to give the opportunity to present this guide. I would also like to thank Colonel Orclas Patrick Tiburn for the idea of this guide when he was at the HEMISA, and for his contribution to this presentation. Maybe, yes, he is with us. Okay, I'd like to thank also all the working group 4 members of the ICG Caribbean HWS, and also the National University of Costa Rica for a more visual and attractive document, and of course to UNESCO IOC for its publication. As you see, the link mentioned, the guide is available there. Okay, so now let me introduce the different points we're going to see. Even if the first part of this guide is about tsunami, what it is, what are the signs, what are the safety rules in different environments, because it is important to know what we are talking about. This presentation will focus on how to set up a multi-annual exercise program, and will be based on the guide. So we're going to see the different phases that are the preparation, the conduct, and the lesson learned. Just before, I'm going to complete the element mentioned by Krista about the reason of the existence of this guide. As we talked with Patrick, we identified some points. When we have to organize an exercise, we all might have already faced several challenges due to psychological aspects, as the lack of interest for the exercise or the absence of meanings expressed by the targeted public, the doubt about its usefulness, and maybe the doubt about our own capacities to organize it, the obstacle generated by the fact that the exercise might generate changes into the usual framework. So on the learning aspect, we have to take into account that the organization of the exercise must include progressiveness, must aim periodicity and methodology, and these points are not easy to implement and manage. So we might be afraid to engage ourselves into the organization of an exercise. But there are many reasons to be motivated in setting an exercise. Here are some of them to show what benefits we can have. Exercises permit to test the efficiency of the SOP, the plant, the equipment, to identify the needs in terms of resources, of trainings, and the point to be enhanced, to train the staff to their respective responsibilities in real situation, and give more meaning and confidence, and so to get people more prepared and to get a more efficient organization. that lead to a continuing improvement of the crisis management system. What is also interesting is that stakeholders are preparing themselves and training together, so they get to know each other and understand each other better, and that enhance the internal and external communication. The last benefit, but not the least, is about the similarities of reasoning or analysis between planification and exercise relevant about what to face, what are the stakes, the possible scenarios or evolution of the situation, what is the most appropriate strategy, etc. And all of this for the same outcome. What are the objectives for each objective? What are the actions to implement? So the previous observations are valid for every risk situations, including tsunami threat. So now let's focus on it. Just a simple definition of exercise program. It is a risk analysis-based series of activities, a process defined by a cycle of simulation, evaluation, where interaction and complexity levels are different. And as Christophe previously said, tsunami threats are not frequent. So that's why it is important to develop an exercise program dynamic to keep in mind that the threat is real and that we need to be prepared. So we're going to see the different phases on how to set up exercise in that dynamic. The first phase is about preparation, how to launch, design, develop a tsunami exercise. The second one is about how to conduct, how to perform the exercise. And the last one is also the first of the next exercise. It is the lesson learned. So for the first phase, let me say that all the elements presented here can be found into the guide. So first of all, we have to build a delivery dossier that includes several documents. The first one is a specification note that you can see. Drafting such a document can help you to have an overview of all the aspects of the exercise, particularly the type of exercise, the objectives, the scenarios, the time frame, the rules of play about, for example, the weather, the communication and media's aspects, and the safety measure. It is being considered as a real summary of the exercise, useful from the beginning to the end with the evaluation aspect, as you can see. So to elaborate the note and draft the exercise, the first step is defining the objectives. This must answer to the question, what should the exercise add to the participants' knowledge, know-how, and attitudes? It is a very central question. There are two types of objectives. The overall one, that is a goal we aim to, and the specific ones that give quantitative references that we want to achieve. For example, as written, if you want to test the system of issuing a tsunami warning, this may be the overall objective, and then the specifics one could be to have 100% of those to be evacuated who should know that they can receive a tsunami warning by one of the three methods above. Or another one, 19% of those to be evacuated should have received the warning by at least one of the three methods in less than 5 minutes. So as you may already know, an objective has to be smart, and I think that it is something that you all know. As for specific, it must be precise, and the objective must precise the results that we want. And for measurable, it should set the level of performance through indicators. A for achievable, the participant should achieve the objective. R for realistic, that means based on a potential real life situation. And I stop here to catch your attention about achievable and realistic, because those two aspects are very important to keep the exercise meaningful for the participants and keep them engaged. And finally, T for task-oriented and trend-driven. Each objective should focus on a behavior, a procedure, or function. Okay, so next slide is about choosing an exercise type. You have 4 types. Donc, once the objectives are defined, we can choose the exercise type that permits to achieve the goals. We have 4 types. So the drill that is generally used to test specific operation or function in a single organization. The tabletop exercise to generate discussion of issues related to the state of emergency and practice problem solving. The functional or field exercise to test plans, policies, and procedure in an operational environment with participants performing the function of their role. And finally, the full-scale of exercise to test all the aspects of the warning and emergency management system and processes. The objectives are one of the components to take into account to make the right choice. But there are also other criteria to pay attention to, as the level required for, sorry, just previously, okay. So I was saying that the level of required knowledge of those taking part, for example, we can ask to people who doesn't know what is a tsunami and what are the potential consequences to implement, for example, a full-scale exercise. The other criteria, the available resources, for example, the agency staff can be mobilized on other priorities, or we need some materials and we don't have the money to buy them for the moment. And the last one, the allocated time. For example, if tabletop save time, full-scale exercise requires more time to prepare, to conduct, and evaluate. Okay, so to summarize, each exercise type gets its advantages and its inconveniences, but the different types follow a progressiveness and a learning dynamic. The drill exercise, by focusing on the knowledge of the resources availability, conducts to the knowledge of how capabilities. From this, and knowing this aspect, implementing a tabletop exercise through scenarios enhance the knowledge about tsunami impacts, the warning system, and how to respond about the evacuation route and safe location. And then a full-scale exercise to improve the responses to a tsunami events. These exercise types can be seen as a way to move step by step to a better and a concrete tsunami preparedness. And as written, make sure you do not run before you can walk. The most important is not going fast, but to be sure that each step made is sustainable victory into the preparedness process. So the next step is about the choice of the scenario. The scenario must be a thought through. It must be related to the objectives and not the opposite, credible and compatible with the geographical location. For example, it must be based on the maximum projected height of rate in the region on the existing warning system. The scenario must be diversified because the diversification is one of the best ways to practice because it helps us to progress into the objectives. The different career brave exercise scenarios available at the mentioned link can help. So you have this resource, but you can also ask to your national or local emergency management organization. Okay. So for the preparation, to finish this phase, some elements to pay attention to that we have already seen by taking a look at the specification note. The time frame, the duration. Do we do that in real or compressed time? The information about the exercise. Do we choose to announce the date, the hour, or to let it unannounced? Do we allow medias to be present? What are the rules? For example, during a full exercise, it begins to rain. Do we continue or do we stop? The safety measures, this aspect may need a real time to check the different issues, as well as the logistics. A tabletop exercise will not require the same materials that if we set a full-scale exercise. For example, for a full-scale, we may need cars, comedians to play roles. This won't be necessary for a tabletop exercise. Now, I will just focus on the two boards presenting the synopsis that can be defined as a timeline of the key moment and the response expected, and the timeline that can be defined as the chronology of the group actions that will be introduced to elicit a response from participants. And it is more detailed, than the synopsis. These tools are very important to prepare because it represents the common thread, the document we have to refer to moderate the exercise, to see if we are in time, if we have to change some events because we see that the difficulties are too important for the participant, etc. So in the synopsis, we will find the events, the incidents, the time, where the exercise begins, where it ends, and the receiver with the action. Into the timeline, we will find more details elements as the actual time, the exercise time that may be different. So you see that it is written in a different way. You have the sender, the receiver, the method of communication. That is a very important aspect to know how we communicate between the participant and the group of the organization, the events, and the expected responses. So this was the slide for the presentation, for the preparation. And they were numerous because if we can say that, as for every project, the design phase is one of the most important. So now let's see the second phase, the conduct through two slides. The first one is dedicated to people taking part to the exercise. We have three categories. It is important from the beginning to identify who will be who during the exercise, who will play what role in order to dimension the human resources needed for the exercise. So we have the first category, the participants, that play the same roles that you would do in the real situation, so they don't know generally the scenario. The second category is about the exercise command and delivery teams that define the rules, the boundaries, that deal with all the practicalities and logistics, especially for the safety aspect, and they ensure the safety during the exercise. We can distinguish the exercise command team as we are at a coordination level, and the delivery group will be more focused, more in charge of the implementation of the exercise. And then you have the third category, the evaluators that observe, analyze the conduct of the exercise. They do not take part in the exercise, but they contribute to drafting a formal action plans and points to capitalize on. So just now see some specific guidance to pay attention to. For a drill exercise, we have to keep in mind the goal we want to achieve. For the tabletop exercise that tests the organizational capacity of a community, in a crisis situation, this requires leaders to formalize the decision, to present the situation report, and above all, a robust delivery team for a good understanding, communication method well established, and to be capable of interacting and making adjustments. This team help to analyze the situation, anticipate potential developments, and propose both setting objectives and taking actions that will protect and or provide assistance to the member of the communities. And for the field exercise, we have since the beginning to be aware of the fact that it requires a more detailed specification note, a synopsis to evaluate the responses and check if the participants are in line with the objective, a large number of participants, and a less precise timeline as the exercise focuses on the observation of the responses. And the third and last but not the least phase, the lesson learned. So this is an essential phase to learn from the past experience of conducting an exercise, to capitalize on good practices, to avoid making the same mistake again. And this phase can be in two parts generally. The hot lesson learned directly after the end of the exercise with all the participants, and this is facilitated by the exercise command team. And during this time, we get the opinions of the different groups regarding the positive points and the points for improvement. And we need to be sure that all these key elements are recorded. And then several weeks after the exercise, we have the called lesson learned with a smaller group of people capitalizing on the positive points and the point for improvement. And these elements are consolidated in writing and brought to attention to the participant. And this phase is very important because all these elements, all these written elements are the basis for a draft action plan, and as previously said, is a point of departure of a new exercise. So what we can say to conclude this presentation is that implementing multi-annual tsunami exercise is very important, as exercise raise awareness and increase preparedness to an infrequent fate called tsunami. So what we can say is that step by step, and not only during Caribbean wave, let's implement exercise for people and territories being tsunami ready. Thank you. Stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Marie, for the introduction of the guidelines. This is has been a really hard work led by France, and has been to a wonderful outcome that no doubt will be really, really useful for not only member states in the Caribbean region, but worldwide. I want to tell you, all the participants, all the participants, that the manual is being translated to Spanish and French, and will be available hopefully very soon with the same layout as the English version. And of course, it will be available in digital and printed. I want to open the floor for questions now. I don't see any questions yet, but you can find the link to download the manual in the chat. I have.
Sylvia, so with the go-to, yeah, just, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just Marie. So I don't know, Sylvia, if you have like the questions, I don't know.
I have one question from Susan West. Says, great details. What were some of the outcomes from recent exercises? What done well, where improvement needed? Maybe this is for Krista.
Yes, so we had, so our last exercise was done on March 10th. Just wait a second, I just got lost here. Okay, yeah. Marie, can you like stop sharing, please? Thank you. So we had, the exercise was held on March 10th, and right now we're in the process of gathering the formal feedback from the member states. But of course, in the process, one also has, there's already lessons learned. We had for the second year in a row, we had a hut wash. So that had been an observation in previous years that we would do the exercise and we wouldn't have any feedback. You know, we'd wait until the ICG Caribe EWS to get feedback, and we thought it was important to get feedback a lot closer. So we did have that feedback. One of the objectives, if you give me 1 second, I have a whole list of lessons learned. Give me 1 minute, please, as I open up. I had to restart my computer, so I lost all my documents that were on the. I'm so sorry, this will take a while, but please follow. Let's wait a second, please. I'm sorry, I'm like, been a lot of things going on these days. I'm so sorry. Just oh, Stephanie, wasn't that feedback form in the drive?
Yes, it is on the Caribe Wave folder.
In Caribe Wave 2022?
Yes.
In a special another folder underneath that, final reports?
No.
Okay. And post exercise, where is it? I'm sorry, just.
I'm gonna take the time while Krista searches the
Sorry, I'm just gonna go ahead and Stephanie, if you can please bring it up and put it online, that would be good. But yeah, so one of the things was that there is a big challenge. Oh, now I have my dog. So one of the big challenges, we want to get an exercise manual out as soon as possible. So if you're doing like a and you're wanting to prepare for it, the sooner you have the handbook, the better. And our goal is always to have it out in November. In order to get it out in November, before that, we have these scenarios and we have to get an agreement by the scientists, and that's sometimes taking quite a bit of time. So how we can be a little bit more efficient. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. So how we can be a little bit more efficient, get that out faster so the countries can have that, so then they can establish their objectives based on what the scenario, they can sort of use that as input for the decisions they're making, because we understand, if they're not seeing the manual until December, January, and the exercise is in March, then time could be a little bit short. But so for some of the follow-up actions, we divide them up first in PTWC. So what did we learn from PTWC products? So for example, we learned that not all the sea level stations that are actually available were in the PTWC product, or things that were misspelled and things like that. So that we do. For example, in Katak, they did their test, but we did not have their sample products before the exercise. So how would that affect maybe the country's participation? We did for ITIC car, we told about having the manual in November, and then also the we do this survey, right? And this is a big thing for the Caribe EWS. So we do a survey after this exercise, but then there are other surveys that are also done by Caribe EWS. So how can we better link the survey that's done for Caribe Wave with the member states' annual report to ICG and after action reports, right? Because we don't want to over duplicate the work of the country. So we thought we could do more work there. A big challenge we've had is pictures and videos of the exercises. So how can we do that? There's a lot of paperwork. If you want to send in a picture, right? How can we do that? This year, we need to update the tsunami warning focal points and national tsunami warning centers before the exercise. This year, we did not have that early enough, so we were getting last minute requests that, oh, this person changed and they're part of the exercise, and that's very challenging. You know, PTWC might make that adjustment for the exercise, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a permanent change to the database, right? Because there's a formal process how that's updated. So we've done some circumventing of that formal process just to support the member states, but that should be, we need to have that information earlier in February when we do our webinars. Yeah, so in ICG, Caribe, EWS, you know, what scenarios we choose, maybe go a little bit more deeper into the objectives of the exercise. So yeah, that's some things. And Tsunami Zone, there was some feedback on registration, but I think, you know, it's really good to have that, but there was some things like certificates, make sure we have the right logos before the exercise, and then people start realizing when they print after the exercise that there was some logo that needed to be updated. So yeah, so yeah, we're trying to be, so those are some of the feedback from exercises. So yes, we have been, Gary, have all these already, and we still haven't, you know, have more as the member states contribute theirs.
Thank you, Krista. I have time for one last question. This is from Dr. Laura Kong to Marie Noel. Thank you to Marie Noel for the detailed presentation. We look forward to sharing your experiences and lessons learned with the other regions of the world. A question I have is this: what is your estimate of how much work and how long it takes to prepare each exercise, and then how much effort it has been in evaluating? I understand it's like comparing the effort put in preparation with the effort put in evaluating.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for the question and for the comment. I'm gonna try to answer, but I think that if Patrick could complete, or everyone invested in exercise, in times for each exercise, I don't have precisely the time for each. It is in the manual, but I don't have them in memory. But what I can say is that a drill exercise needs more time, less time, sorry, than a full-scale exercise. From my return of experience in Martinique, I can say that we have to deal, for example, for a full-scale exercise, with the different stakeholders, the different partners, and some have other priorities. So it is the problem about the coordination to find good times to meet, to prepare, and that takes a lot of time. And I linked to the previous question and to this one, I think that the evaluation phase is one of the most difficult, because I have the feeling that once the exercise is handed, people go quickly to other activities, and it's quite difficult to remobilize energy to get good elements. And I think that it is a real challenge, because what we are trying to do is to see year after year the different return of experience on the exercise. And this year particularly, we invest a lot in communication, in moderation, to stimulate stakeholders, etc. And I think that it is a question of coordination on the territory. And I think that it is the the real challenge for some territories. And human relations are also an important challenge, because sometimes it permits to gain time, and sometimes we lose time because of, as Krista says, changing person into different function, etc. I don't know if Patrick is online and is able to complete my answer, because he worked a lot on exercise and full-scale exercise.
Yes, Patrick is online and his hand is raised. I'm not sure if he can just unmute. Patrick, can you just
Hello.
unmute? And,
Do you hear me? Okay.
welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Yes.
Hi, Sylvia and Krista and
Hello.
Mary. Excuse me for because I got COVID. That's why I'm so disponible to be with you this afternoon. But it's okay. It's okay. I'm not too ill. Yes, that question of the time necessary to prepare an exercise, it's really effectively depends on the type of exercise. You have field exercise and tabletop exercises, but it also depends on what objectives you want to achieve for this exercise. Most of the time, it's preferable not to have a lot of objectives for an exercise, because what is interesting, and that's what Mary explained with an exercise, is to get lessons learned from this exercise. So if you have one or two objectives precisely defined, it will be easier to have very interesting lessons learned, and to have an action plan to progress. Because the importance with an exercise is to progress in your preparation, progress in your planification, progress in the preparation of your actors, of the population, and that's it's when you plan an exercise, you fix one or two or three objectives, and you will take time to focus on these objectives. Obviously, when you prepare a field exercise, most of the time it's more complex than a tabletop exercise, because in a field exercise, you have to take care a lot of security consideration for the people doing this exercise. You have to, but in the same time, the field exercise is easier to conduct that a tabletop exercise, because the tabletop exercise, you have to construct a scenario, to prepare injects that permits to the people playing the exercise to understand what is happening. On a field exercise, you have not this problem. The reality between you, between for the players are present. You see, so I think it's two type of exercise, and you have to choose between according with your objectives. I repeat me, but according with your objective that you want to achieve, you have to choose one or another exercise, and to define the time you want to pass to for this exercise. Last thing, preparing an exercise, people preparing an exercise, they teach a lot of, and preparing the exercise is very pedagogic for the people preparing more generally to the response for tsunami, for example, because you learn to work together. You learn a lot of when you prepare the exercise together. That's what I want to complete to your propos.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I hope you get well soon with the COVID situation. And thank you very much for taking the time and effort to participate and be part of this and answer the questions. So we are now 5 minutes over our planned time. I want to thank you, Krista and Marie, for the presentations you made and the nice introduction to this work that is going to be very important for all coastal communities reaching this Ocean Decade goal of 100% tsunami-ready communities by 2030. So we have one more tool to use, and that, again, I repeat, is going to be translated to Spanish and French, so we can get more people able to use it. So I want to thank all the audience for your time and participation and valuable questions. And that's all for us. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, everyone. So
Bye bye.
Thank you,
help
everyone.
get the word
Thank you,
out
Cesar.
about this document. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.